This Manage Smarter episode is brought to you by SalesFuel's Coach Feed, your AI-powered assistant sales coach. Improve your salespeople with automated regular coaching in just 2 minutes a day with Coach Feed. For more information, visit coachfeed.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop, and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
Our guest today, Lee, he has founded 6 different companies to over $100 million in lifetime revenue. I don't think we've had many guests on that have done that.
I think we call that a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, an overachiever. Although maybe that's not enough. Maybe he's on the road to 200 million. We'll have to ask
Maybe
him, right?
He's underachieving. We don't know. Let's find out.
Welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. I'm Audrey Strong, the Vice President of Communications here at SalesFuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith, the President and CEO of SalesFuel.
And so our guest today is Don Long, and I got to tell you, over the past 30 years, he is, like I said, 6 companies, 100 million in revenue. The last company he built went into the top 1,000 companies in the U.S. for that industry vertical. And this is what we want to talk to him about, the author of 2 books, The Blueprint of God and the international best-selling book, Sell or Don't Eat, which is selling from the soul, as he says. He's also got 3 courses, and we'll put links in the show notes to these as well. The Blueprint Matrix, Selling from the Soul, and world-class business assessment tools. So Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys. I'm glad to be here.
So tell me about this company before we get started here that went into the top 1,000.
Yeah, so it was one of the businesses that was our core business from about the late 80s into the mid 2000s, as I dabbled with 4 or 5 different other companies. And a couple of them, one of them I built in the early 2000s and sold out of that company, which was in the same genre. It was a landscape management business where we had covered most of the state of North Carolina and grown it into a lot bigger company than I thought we would ever do when we first started the business. But basically what happened is that one day my office manager came in and brought me a magazine. I was just out doing business and building the company and trying to get better every year. And she brought a magazine article in here and showed me the revenues of the top 100 companies and the top, 1%, that sort of thing. And I was like, wow, we're in the top 1,000, So I actually got caught by surprise by one of my staff members for the information. So it was kind of a fun day, but, I never really focused on being in the top 1%. Obviously, we had goals and things that we set out for the company for metrics every year, but I really focused on building people and building systems in the process of both of those, and basically people, processes, and product, and worked on those 3 things continually every 12 months.
One of the things that you like to talk about is identifying major impact areas, helping people work on those. What would you say in the COVID business environment we're in right now are some of the impact areas we should be addressing and really looking at closely?
I have one impact area that I think is the beginning one that I usually work with the companies on at a higher level when I'm working with teams that have vice president level positions across the United States, multiple locations, and it is communication. With COVID being in place, the tendency's been, obviously, there's been more Zoom meetings, there's been less in-person meetings, but I can tell you one of the ramifications of that is the teams and the lack of communication. Actually, when it's actually easier to communicate, we actually avoid it. And so the very first impact area that I usually teach on is communication style, not only to each other within the organization, but how we're communicating to our clients as well, and working on those 2-step processes of communication and helping people identify hindrances and blockages in their organizations where there's a lack of communication.
So what's a couple of good tips that you can give somebody right off the bat, or what are the top things that you see routinely with the companies that you consult with?
Typically, there's the couple things that probably the top thing that I see is that people do not consistently work on the major impact areas of their company. They talk about it, they plan on it, but they actually never do it. And so what I end up doing is I call it pig-headed discipline for the leaders to call them on the mat of working on these things. And how I go about doing that is we identify the top. If you're a large company, you're going to have, and you're the CEO of that company, you're going to have somewhere between 10 and 12 impact areas. I had 12 that I covered within the organization that I had sold a couple years ago. And what we tried to do is work on each individual impact area once a month over 12 months. It just happened to work out perfectly since we had 12. But if you're a smaller company, you might start out with 6 or 8. And they might be something like, the first 2 for me were communication. And then the second one was sales. And then the third one was price cost structures. How are we pricing our products? So those are kind of the top 3 that we worked on. And what I find with corporations that are like Fortune 500 companies, they have all the systems in place. They have all the things in place, but they actually never do it, which is unfortunate. And so what I do when I work with people is I really try to push them on actually working on the business every month, not just in it. And you get so much incremental return over doing that when you do it over the course of 12 months.
Because you create what you call aliveness in your people, right? You said happy people are productive people. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, that we had our top beliefs within the companies that I ran was basically happiness, the pursuit of it, helping people identify their own dreams and desires, exclusive from the company, which is hard to do sometimes. And then if you do those 2 things correctly within an organization, and the larger it gets, obviously it gets harder because you have to have leaders at each level that are willing to step into the fray and do that. But when you do that, it actually creates a level of being fully alive that most organizations don't have. It becomes an organic cultural revolution, if you will, because if I come to you as a CEO of a company that has 1,000 people, let's just use that as an example, and you have layers of teams. If I can get you fully alive because I help you identify some of your goals and dreams, and I also give you a process of where you can achieve those within this corporate structure, you're coming to the company every day with skin in the game versus just coming to work for a paycheck. And I'll tell you that if I can get one thing in any organization to shift, is people actually being happy when they come to work. Because I can tell you, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. Do you want to be around happy people or do you want to be around sad people? It's just the difference in day and night of the way an organization runs.
So would you say that that's one of the big factors that keeps small companies small, or takes small companies and allows them to grow into big companies?
It is between the 2. If you take kind of my goal with large, what I consider large leaders at the level of the head of the companies, I tend to work on the blueprint matrix with them before I go into business stuff. I tend to work on desire, strengths, gifting, identity, things like that. And I try to drill down on those things before I actually start talking about making money, profit margins, whether they're doing well in communication and stuff. I actually work on those things at a higher level, and then we drill down on some of the business stuff. But if you take the 2 things, if you take the impact areas and you take being fully alive and having happy people coming to work, if you take those 2 things, those together either cause your company to explode in a good way, or they limit your growth indefinitely. Because what I found is that most people work in their businesses, but they hardly ever work on them. And then the second part of that is they don't actually identify the things that make them and their teams. It has to be more, it's like, you guys know this, but it has to become more than just about you and your own personal desires as a leader. It has to become about your team. And if it never becomes about your team, because look, if I have a team, the last company I ran, my close inner circle was 5 people, and my next circle, which was kind of an inner circle, was about 15. So, there was about 20 people that could get to me anytime they wanted to. And if they don't feel alive, if they don't feel like I'm in the game for them as well as me, but it has to be about them first and then me. Then you're not going to grow the business. And that goes to the very root of them feeling alive and feeling like they have skin in the game. And then if you do that part well, and they will buy into your systems, they will buy into the impact areas if you get that one right. Because when they come, they're engaged. But if you try to teach systems and impact areas without getting the buy-in first, the law of buy-in John Maxwell talks about, which has to do with a connection to your heart of the leader and them being happy. If you don't do that, the other is just it's just going to be fluff. It's just noise.
Let's talk about the managers, because they're the ones that impact, the majority of the people in the company. It's like, what type of obstacles do you typically see in them that they have toward their happiness? Because it seems like if they're not happy, the rest of the team's not going to be happy. And, what do you see with, what would you recommend then to top management, if you will, on how to coach their managers to be able to achieve this aliveness?
They have to get alive first. It's easy to give away what you have. And if you don't have it, you can't give it away. And so what I do is like with my core team, I had 2 vice presidents, and then I had 3 other people that were not vice presidents, but they could have been in that role. But they were in my top 5 core team. They were my inner circle. Their lives meant more to me than my own life per se. And so anything they wanted, any issue they had, anything that bothered them about the company, and also it went into their personal life, which is a fine line. They'd have to want that. But anything that troubled them, if I could see, you have to learn how to read your people. If I could see things weren't going right, I could see things, if you're around people and they're your inner circle, you should know when things are not right. So some of that goes to the intuitive level of being a leader. But when I see that, I would try to address it and help if I could. And then when they get it and they are alive, that goes through your whole organization. It's like building a company. It took me years to figure out that organic cultural systems of being alive, being happy, and then buy-in through the systems are all one thing. And it doesn't sound like one thing, but it really is, because if I can get the managers, the people that are closest to me, buy-in where it's really real to them at a cellular level, all the way through their body, their emotions, their mind, their will, their heart is in the game. If I can get that, then what happens is they can easily give it away to the next tier within the company structure.
I had the opportunity when I was young in my career to hear Keith Harrell speak, and the late Keith Harrell, and he said, I'll never forget this. He said, a dead battery can't jumpstart a dead battery.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's a good analogy. So at the end of the day, if you take the battery analogy and, if it's fully juiced and fully alive, it's like, hey, it's easy to give that away.
Yeah, but the batteries sometimes run a little low for all of us. So it's like we have to take time out to recharge that battery.
That's exactly right. That's a good point. I'll hit that point because, look, every day is not a good day. And my team that was closest to me, we had this rule. We actually had a set of Nerf guns. Y'all know what Nerf guns are?
I love the Nerf guns, yeah.
So we had the Nerf guns in every one of our offices in the main team that had offices at the corporate office. And so what we would do was, if we're having a bad day or something's not going right, we were given the right to shoot people with the Nerf guns, just go in their office and start shooting the gun. And it just broke the tension. And so we did fun things like that to try to break patterns. Because look, you guys know this, y'all been in business for a while. Life is full of mundane Mondays, and there's very few magical Fridays in business, because most of the time you spent into the valleys of life, and the mountaintop experiences are few and far between. And so you have to be able to be in for the long haul in the valleys of growth in order to experience the mountaintop. So what we did is we told people, hey, if you have a bad day, it's all good. Even if you have a bad week. If it goes past a week, then you need to come see me or see somebody on our staff and see if we can get it fixed. But we let people I told them, look, when you're having a bad day or a bad week, try to stay away from our clients and try to stay isolated as much as possible with your job, because it's like, you don't need to be talking to clients if you're really having a bad day. Like, people say, well, you don't bring your personal life to work. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And so we tried to build what I would call release valves within the company so people could release that pressure and the things they were dealing with.
Some of it's still a mindset though. It's like, it's like, don't tell me you're having a bad day when it's not even lunchtime yet. It's like, there's a whole other half of the day.
Yeah, but I got up at 3:30. No.
Well, you're having lunch at 8 a.m. apparently. So you're having lunch
Well, can you address that though in a COVID environment? I mean, so you don't bring your personal life. Well, my home is now my office. So, and then some are quite depressed, just because we can't go anywhere or do anything if we're following the rules. And so I don't know, maybe if you have advice beyond, obviously hoping you provide an EAP program for your folks. It's hard to sometimes cope and still have that aliveness.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I do with people is I'm a big believer in working on what you can. So when you're shut down, so to speak, like we have been with the COVID, and you really are limited to interaction and what you can actually go out and do, there are still things that you can do. When this first happened, what I did with a few of the people that I was working with one-on-one is I started talking to them to reassess their goals, to reassess what in life makes them happy, what turns them on, fires them up. Make a new list. Get your journal. I'm a big believer in journals. Get your journal out and start looking at life. Even though you are limited to physical actions and things you can do, you are not limited within your spirit. There's no limitation within your spirit, and there's no limitation within your mindset. And so what I would do is there's the 7 things that I work on, the Blueprint Matrix. I'll hit a couple of those. I would start talking to people about their interest in work and what's beautiful to them. The 6th step in my process is finding out what's beautiful to you. Well, when you're in a depressed state and a shutdown like we've been in, it's a great time to ask that question. What turns me on? What lights me up? What makes me laugh? What makes me feel alive in my life now at my house when I can't even go to work? Don't compare it to the model before. And then when you do that, it actually sets it's like interrupting patterns of unbelief, or interrupting patterns of depression, or interrupting patterns of I can't do this or I can't do that. As Lee was saying, it's a mindset. And so you have to figure out the things that you can actually be grateful for and thankful for right now.
Yeah, because gratefulness is really important right now, Don. I mean, I'm with you 100% on that, because look, it's easy, to wallow in all the negative things that are going on, whether it be an election, or whether it be a protest or civil unrest, or the progress we haven't made as a society, that we thought we had made, and it's like, or the economy. It's like it's traffic. It's easy to find that. It's like, but we have to take a moment to really stop and look at and be truly grateful for what we have: our families, our houses, our relationships, our friends, our jobs. I mean, whether it could be the car you drive. I mean, it could be the shoes you're wearing that you really like. I mean, it could be anything.
There's always something to celebrate. Most people do not realize this, but the poorest people under poverty line in the United States of America are richer than 90% of the rest of the world.
And I believe that's true. I grew up in rural West Virginia, and it's like some of the happiest, friendliest people you want to meet.
Hey, it's like, what can you be happy about? It's like, hey, getting fully alive sometimes means grabbing yourself by your pants and just going outside. This sounds crazy, but just go out and run until you're out of breath, then just start screaming, I'm fully alive. Let me tell you something. You'll feel different. You might look like a freak in front of your neighbors, but you'll feel different when you get done. So much of interrupting your pattern and changing the way you think has to do with your physical movement. If you move physically different, I'm sitting here, you can't see me, but to get up for, a talk like this and talk to you guys, I'm moving around. Which I'm an active person anyways, but your body language produces a feeling inside of your body. The body language studies prove this. And so there's always, being shut down at your house, there's always something you can do. Like when I get off this talk, I can go outside and run. I can go outside and breathe the fresh air. And it's kind of cool in North Carolina right now. So it's nice. And you can start celebrating that you can breathe. There are people who can't breathe air because of COPD and their lungs not working well. So there's always things we can celebrate.
I love it. The website, donwlong.com, and you're Don W. Long on LinkedIn. What's the W for?
It's Wesley. My
Oh,
dad's
that's
name.
nice. That's an excellent middle name. I love it. And then you've got the courses, Selling from the Soul and the Blueprint of God, and your 2 books, Sell or Don't Eat and The Blueprint of God. All great tips, Don. Thanks for shedding some light into COVID-19 for our listeners. I think these are great tips.
Yeah, love it and been enjoyed being here.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at SalesFuel.com.